So if you're just getting started with working on the Unix or Linux command line, or if you've had some experience working with it, chances are there are certain things that you wish there was a command for. And so in this video, I'll be sharing with you 5 of these commands which you will probably have wanted to use at some point. Now let's get started. The first command is grep, which stands for globally search a regular expression and print. So just to take a simple file as an example, I have a React project open over here and I have a git ignore file on the right over here. You can feel free to use whichever project or file you want, but I'm going to use this as an example. So say you want to find all occurrences of the env word over here, then you can simply do grep env from the file.gitignore, click enter, and then you see results of every line where the env occurred. And say in some case where you have upper and lowercase letters, for example, like so, if let's say you have these as capital ENVs and you want to search for all of these instead, then you can actually use the -i flag or the ignore case. So in this case, if I do grep env here, I will only be able to find the capital letters env. So 4 lines. If I were to do grep -i to ignore the case, then I can find all cases where I have env, whether or not they are upper or lowercase. In addition, if you want to ignore this particular word instead, then what you can do is grep -i followed by -v to say you want an invert match. So in this case, to exclude the word env, whether or not it's upper or lowercase, and the file that we want to search is the .gitignore file. And here you can see all the lines which don't have env in lowercase or in caps. To specify that you want a specific starting for a line, then you can do, instead of this, you can do in quotes, the caret symbol or shift 6 followed by this. And don't forget to add the dot. If you try this, you'll see all the lines that start with .env in caps. Now I'm not going to go through all the variations that you can do with grep, I'm just going to go through the simple examples that are more commonly used. If you'd like to learn more, I'll link a few resources in the description below. But one more important feature about grep is that it also supports regular expressions. So say now I want to find cases where I have env as well as yarn. Then I can do grep with the flag -capital E and say that I want to search for env and use the pipe operator to say or, so env or yarn, and I want to search that in the .gitignore file, and there you have the lines which contain env as well as yarn, excluding the lines where you have capital env. So that's the first command. The second command is something like an extension of grep, is set, a stream editor. So say you wanted to look at the contents of this gitignore file, one way you can do this is to do cat of this file, and that will print out whatever is in the file. Another way to do this using set is to say set and open quotation marks and .gitignore, and you should see the exact same results. But that's not really the point of set. The main point of set is to edit, as its name suggests. So if let's say you wanted to replace all of the lowercase envs with uppercase envs, you can run set and then in quotation marks you can say as for substitute, and we want to substitute the lowercase env with capital env. And one last thing to add is the /g, which means we want to do this globally throughout the whole file. If you were to not include this, then we'll see that, let's go back to the top again. If you were to do this without the g, then we need to add a /, and you should see that the changes are as we would expect. But if let's say we were to have an additional env at the end, and let's try in this case, if we were to save this and run the same command again without the /g, you see that the second env over here is not converted into uppercase. And another thing to notice is that although the changes are reflected over here, the file itself is not actually changed. So this is really great for experimenting with the changes that you're going to make to your file. And if you really want to make the changes permanent, then you can use the -i flag, which will make all of these changes in place. So again, this time if you were to do the command now with the /g, so that we will replace all instances of env occurring in any part of the line, and we were to do this with the -i flag to say that we want to do this in place, then we get an invalid command code. But if let's say we try to add the open quotations, let's try this, we should be able to see the changes being made over here in the gitignore file, just like that. So it seems that at least on a Mac you would have to add the empty quotation marks, empty string over here, for this in-place edit to work. Alright, the next thing that you might want to do is to count the number of files in a directory. Seems a bit random, but perhaps at some point you might want to check the number of files that you have in, let's say, your data folder. So to do that, you can actually use a combination of commands. So first, if I do ls, you can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 files over here. And to count the number of these files, I can do ls and then pipe that into word count and say -l, and this will give you the exact number 8. So I find this really useful. Basically what's happening is that the output of ls, which is over here, is piped into word count. So we're going to count the number of lines in each of these. And if you notice, this is actually excluding the hidden files such as the .gitignore file, because of the output of ls, which is only the files that are shown. So if let's say you want to count the number of files, whether or not they're hidden, then you can do ls with some flag, let's say -alh, and This time, if I run the command, you should see that we have 15 files, because if I do ls, or rather if I just do L, you should see that we have 15 lines over here, and that actually includes this total over here as well. So you have to be careful with what you're passing into the word count command. Another simple trick that you might want to use if, let's say, you want to add contents onto a file and you don't want to have to open up the file manually, whether in a IDE or in a text editor, then you can use the command echo. So in this case, if let's say I want to add a couple of lines to my .gitignore file, I can do echo -e, which I'll explain what it means in a second. So if I do echo -e and say I want to ignore a VNV folder, and also add a new line below that and say I want to ignore all files that end with the .swp extension. It looks a bit complicated, but basically what's happening is I am adding a line that says VNV/ and adding a new line, and on that new line we're going to add star.swp, which is going to ignore all files that end with .swp. Now where do we want to echo this content to? We want to echo that into the .gitignore file, and we use two arrows here to say that we want to append to that file rather than overwriting the whole file itself. So if I run this command, and now if I cat the contents of that .gitignore file, we should see the changes being made over here at the bottom. So the -e flag was basically just to allow us to have these escape sequences like this \n, and that allows you to have new lines in your edits to the file. Now the fifth and final command that you might have wanted to use is one where you can move multiple files to a single folder. So if let's say here we have a JSON file and another JSON file here, just as an example, if let's say we want to move these JSON files into a new folder and call that folder JSON, then to do that we can say move the package.json and also move the package-log.json, and now I can just say me-json, and if I click enter you should see that now we have moved those files, and inside if I list what I have in the me-json folder, we should see those two files that we have just moved. The last argument that you pass to this mv command is always going to be the destination that you want to move your files to. So essentially you can add as many files as you want in the middle over here. So those were the 5 commands that at least for me I've wanted to use at some point, and I hope you find this useful as well. If you like the video, do give it a like, share it, and consider subscribing for more such videos. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions, please drop a comment down in the comment section below and I'll be happy to chat with you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.